Part 1. The Cold Metal Tomb. The sun drops behind the skyline on a Tuesday in January. For most people, that's the moment they tap the thermostat, maybe complain about the cold on the way to the kitchen. But for thousands of others, that same sunset is the opening bell of a nightly survival match. Your bedroom? A 2004 sedan. Your walls? Thin steel and glass. Your insulation? Basically non-existent. And the temperature outside is sliding towards zero, like it's trying to erase you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sleeping in a freezing car should kill you. Biology says so. Your core temperature falls, your organs begin shutting down, and hypothermia doesn't care if you've had a hard day. And yet, across America, across Canada, across the cold corners of Europe, there are people who survive entire winters inside unheated cars. No electric heaters, no luxury sleeping bags, no $1,000 survival gear. What they do have is something far more powerful. Physics, ingenuity, and the kind of grit you only develop when life takes everything else away. Welcome to the Shelter Project. Today, we're not looking at tragedy. We're looking at engineering raw, unforgiving, street-tested engineering born from necessity. We're stepping into the world of the micro-cabin, a freezing metal box transformed into a controlled thermal system. We're breaking down the science of the heat vampire, that silent enemy stealing warmth through every window. We're examining the metabolic furnace, the ancient biological trick your ancestors used long before homes had heating. And we're navigating the urban chess of parking where the wrong spot could mean the difference between waking up and not waking up. Because the people living this life, they're not just homeless. They are reluctant engineers. Men and women who've learned to manipulate convection, radiation, airflow, moisture, and time itself, just to make it through the night. So the real question isn't just how they do it. It's this. What does their resilience reveal about the strength we all carry inside? Strength we don't realize we have until the cold comes for us. Let's find out. Part 2. The physics of the heat vampire. Before we talk solutions, we have to understand the enemy. And in the world of car living, the enemy isn't the cold. It's the glass. Every window in your vehicle is a traitor, a heat vampire quietly sucking warmth out of your car all night long. About 70% of all the heat you lose doesn't go through the doors, or the floor, or the roof. It escapes through those thin panes of glass that might as well be holes in the wall. A parked car has a thermal profile that's almost designed to fail. Unlike a home wrapped in layers of insulation, a car is nothing more than a thin metal shell surrounded by 6 squares of freezing glass. Steel conducts cold. Glass conducts cold even faster. Put them together, and you're basically sleeping inside a refrigerator someone left unplugged. And then there's the convection loop, the invisible thief working inside the cabin. Ever notice how your feet feel colder than your chest? That's not your imagination. Here's what actually happens. Your body warms the air immediately around you. That warm air rises straight toward the roof. It hits the cold metal or cold glass, loses energy, gets heavier, and falls. Then the cycle repeats. Up, then down. Like a conveyor belt, moving heat away from your skin and dumping it onto the floor, where it does absolutely nothing for you. This loop can strip warmth from your body faster than you can replace it. And that's the real problem. Your body is basically an 80 to 100 watt space heater. Impressive, until you realize the car is shedding heat faster than you can generate it. It doesn't matter how tough you are. It doesn't matter how many layers you wear. If you don't interrupt this physics equation, the cold will win. To survive a winter night inside a metal box, you don't just need blankets. You need to defeat thermodynamics, or at least outsmart it long enough to see the sunrise. Part 3. The Foam Coffin. Mastering Insulation. If you want to survive inside a freezing car, you can't rely on blankets alone. Blankets keep you warm, but they don't keep the car warm. To transform a vehicle into a thermal cocoon, experienced car dwellers build something with a name that sounds dramatic, because it is. The Foam Coffin. Not a real coffin, but a precise, hand-built insulation system that can mean the difference between a miserable night and a survivable one. And it all starts with window warfare. Windows are the #1 thermal weakness of any car. 6 pieces of glass acting like open doors for heat to escape. So, car sleepers create custom-fitted insulation panels using Reflectix, that shiny bubble wrap material coated in aluminum foil. But here's the part most beginners get wrong. If you press Reflectix directly against the window, it stops working. Instead of insulating, it becomes a conductor, a shiny metal highway for heat to escape.
Veterans know the secret. Leave an air gap, just a tiny one. That pocket of dead air turns a single window into the thermal equivalent of a double pane unit. The result? A huge boost in R value for nothing more than good geometry and a $10 roll of material. Which leads to their next trick. CAD. Cardboard-aided design. Forget fancy software. Forget lasers. Car dwellers tape newspaper, aluminum foil, or cardboard directly onto the inside of the window, trace the exact curve, cut the perfect outline, and use that as their master template. And because many car windows are symmetrical, a template made for the driver's side can be flipped to fit the passenger side. 2 covers for the price of 1 sheet of cardboard. Efficiency born from necessity. But insulation isn't the only goal. Survival on the street requires stealth. Veterans coat one side of their Reflectix with matte black fabric or spray paint. At night, the black side faces outward, turning every window into what looks like factory tinting. From a distance, the car blends in. No glow, no movement. No reason for a security guard or police officer to deliver the dreaded 2 a.m. knock. And during the day, that same black surface becomes a solar sponge, absorbing sunlight and preheating the cabin before the temperature drops again. Warmth and invisibility in a single reversible panel. Cheap, silent, shockingly effective. This is the Foam Coffin. Part insulation system, part camouflage, part passive solar heater. Not designed in a lab, not invented by a company, but built piece by piece by people who had no choice but to become engineers of their own survival. Part 4. The Metabolic Furnace. Ancient biology hacked. Insulation can save you, but biology can warm you. Long before houses had thermostats or furnaces, humans survived brutal winters by relying on something baked deep into our DNA, a survival mode scientists now call metabolic winter. When the light fades and the temperature drops, the human body has a hidden switch, a setting that makes it burn fat more aggressively to generate heat. A biological furnace built long before the idea of central heating existed. Veteran car sleepers know this instinctively. They don't fight the cold with gadgets. They fight it with fuel. Their technique is simple, strange, and scientifically brilliant. They eat a high-fat snack 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Not a full meal, not a warm soup. Pure, dense calories. Peanut butter straight from the jar. Chunks of cheese. A tin of sardines. It sounds odd until you understand the science. Fat digestion produces far more heat than carbs, a process called thermogenesis. Your stomach has to work harder, burn hotter, and stay active longer to break down fatty foods. And that heat? It becomes part of your survival system. But here's where the street engineers get clever. They time the burn. Fat takes hours to digest. So if you eat it shortly before sleep, the heat peak hits around 2 to 3 a.m., exactly when the outside temperature crashes, exactly when your core temperature naturally drops, exactly when hypothermia waits for you to slow down. By eating strategically, they sync their internal heat production to the coldest moment of the night. They aren't just sleeping. They're running a biological heater powered by a $2 jar of peanut butter. But there's one mistake that can kill you faster than the cold itself: alcohol. It feels warm for 20 minutes because it forces blood to the surface of your skin. But that warmth is a lie. It's your body draining heat from your core and dumping it into the air like a broken radiator. People have died thinking whiskey would save them. Because when you're fighting the cold, the enemy isn't discomfort. The enemy is physics. And alcohol puts physics on the winning side. Part 5. The Invisible Killer. Atmospheric Safety. There's no way to soften this part. Living in a winterized car is dangerous. Not uncomfortable, not risky, dangerous. Because out there, in the dark, there's an enemy you cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot taste: carbon monoxide. CO is the ghost of combustion, a deadly byproduct that slips into enclosed spaces without making a sound. If your tailpipe gets buried under snow, or if the wind pushes exhaust underneath your car, CO can seep into the cabin while you sleep. More than 400 people in the U.S. die every year from accidental carbon monoxide poisoning. Most never knew anything was wrong. Experienced car dwellers know the truth. CO doesn't give warnings. It just ends the night early. So they follow a simple, unbreakable rule: never sleep with the engine running. Not even for a few minutes. Not even just to warm things up. Instead, they rely on the tools they trust: battery-powered CO detectors clipped near their sleeping area, and smart parking strategies that use the wind as a shield. Veterans park with the nose facing into the wind, letting the air push exhaust away from the vehicle. Not high-tech, just smart physics. But carbon monoxide isn't the only silent danger. There's another sign every car sleeper learns to recognize: a biological alarm that's older than civilization itself. Shivering. Shivering is your body's last stand, a final attempt to generate heat by burning calories at a frantic rate. It means your core temperature is dropping, but your body is still fighting. The real danger? When the shivering stops. Because when your body stops fighting, it's not because you're warm. It's because you're running out of energy to stay alive. If you stop shivering, you don't need heat soon. You need heat now. And that brings us to the coldest moment of the night, the one window every veteran prepares for: 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Temperatures bottom out. Your metabolism slows down. Your core heat dips, and hypothermia becomes more than a theory. So what do car sleepers do? They set alarms. They wake themselves up in the middle of the night, and for exactly 15 minutes, they run their engine to perform what they call a thermal reset. 15 minutes, 0.2 gallons of gas, about 70 cents. 70 cents for safety. 70 cents to keep fingers, toes, or consciousness. 70 cents to see the sunrise. It's not ideal. It's not comfortable. But when you're fighting physics at sub-zero temperatures, it's one of the smartest survival habits ever developed on 4 wheels. Part 6. The War on Moisture. Breathing in an ice cave. Here's the part nobody expects. To survive a winter night inside a car, you actually have to let the cold in. It sounds insane. Why invite freezing air into the one tiny space you're trying to keep warm? Because every night, whether you want to or not, your body performs a quiet act of sabotage. You exhale about 1 pint of water vapor while you sleep, 1 pint. Imagine breathing out an entire water bottle into a metal box with sealed windows. In a normal bedroom, that moisture disappears into the air. But in a car, there's nowhere for it to go. So by dawn, the moisture you breathed all night condenses on every surface, the windshield, the doors, the roof, and then freezes solid. You don't wake up in a cabin. You wake up in an ice cave. And moisture isn't just uncomfortable, it's deadly to your insulation. This is the 40% penalty. A wet sleeping bag can lose up to 40% of its ability to keep you warm.
40% gone. Your best gear becomes mediocre gear, simply because the air inside your car couldn't breathe. So experienced car sleepers do something that goes against every instinct. They crack a window. Not wide, not inches. Exactly half an inch. Just enough to let moisture escape. Not enough to lose serious heat. This tiny opening, nicknamed the survival crack, keeps bedding dry, prevents condensation, and stops your sleeping bag from slowly turning into a cold sponge. And they go further. They use what little airflow exists inside the car to fight the accumulation of moisture. Before bed, they angle all dashboard vents upward, even though the heat is off. This creates small air channels that lift moisture away from surfaces and keep it moving, instead of letting it settle and freeze. It's primitive ventilation in a metal cave. Not elegant, not fancy, but incredibly effective. Because in a battle against the cold, heat loss is only half the enemy. Moisture is the other half. Quieter, sneakier, and just as dangerous. Surviving winter inside a car isn't just about staying warm. It's about staying dry. 1 half-inch crack at a time. Part 7. The sleep system. Architecture of the cocoon. When the temperature drops and the car turns into a metal freezer, the sleep system becomes the final shield between the body and the night. It's not about one magic item. It's an architecture, a layered cocoon built from physics, biology, and whatever material someone has managed to gather. The foundation of that architecture starts with the floor. 1. The floor barrier. Car floors are nothing but thin steel plates pressed directly against the cold air outside. They act like a cold soak, draining heat through conduction faster than any window. People living in their cars have figured out that the ground is the silent thief, so they create a barrier. High-density foam, yoga mats, even stacks of cardboard layered like shingles. It's not glamorous, but it breaks the thermal bridge and stops the cold from crawling straight into their bones. 2. The bag choice. Up top is the sleeping bag, the centerpiece of the cocoon. In northern winters, bags rated to -20 degrees Fahrenheit aren't luxuries. They're survival math. Many choose synthetic insulation over down, not because it's fancy, but because synthetic fibers keep some warmth even when damp. And in a car filled with breath moisture, damp isn't a possibility. It's a guarantee. 3. The hot water bottle hack. Then comes one of the oldest warmth tricks humans ever used. Heated water. A sturdy Nalgene bottle filled with hot water and slipped into a sleeping bag can radiate steady heat for up to 6 hours. And here's where the reluctant engineers get clever. They don't place it at the feet. They nestle it near major blood vessels, the inner thighs, the stomach, turning their circulatory system into a heat distribution network. One bottle becomes a whole-body radiator. But even the warmest setup can fail if the cold finds weak points. Mind the gaps. Cold air is heavy. It sinks. It pools. And it always settles in the lowest corners of a car. Under doors, near footwells, inside the cracks nobody notices.
So car dwellers block those spaces with anything they can spare. Backpacks, jackets, rolled-up clothing. These makeshift barriers don't look like engineering, but they are. Every gap stuffed is a draft stopped, and every draft stopped is heat kept. In the end, the sleep system isn't just a bed. It's a fortress, a carefully assembled cocoon built inch by inch against the cold of the world outside. Part 8. Urban Chess. Strategic Parking Logistics. When you live in a car, survival isn't just about insulation or metabolism. It's about geography. Every night becomes a board game, a kind of urban chess, where the wrong square can cost you warmth, or worse. Because where you park isn't just convenience. It's strategy. It's physics. It's life or death. Hospital parking garages. These places look ordinary from the outside, but to those who understand the game, they're one of the warmest squares on the board. Thanks to heat bleeding from the building, constant foot traffic, and cars coming and going, hospital garages can stay 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the streets outside. That difference can be the thin line between a rough night and a dangerous one. The laundromat radiator. Then there's the laundromat trick, parking against the exterior wall of a 24-hour laundry. Inside, industrial dryers roar all night, pumping out heat that seeps right through the bricks. From the outside, that wall becomes a giant radiator. Park close enough, and you're not just stopping the wind. You're borrowing warmth from a building that never sleeps. Wind shadowing. Wind is a ruthless thief. It strips heat from a car's surface faster than sub-zero air alone. So experienced car dwellers hide behind large objects, buildings, concrete walls, even dense hedges. Anywhere the wind breaks, the temperature stabilizes. Anywhere the air slows down, the night becomes survivable. Solar gain. And then there's the morning. Most people never think about sunrise. Car sleepers have to. They always park facing east, so the first rays of sun hit the windshield directly. Not only does that help melt the ice, it gives them a tiny psychological victory, a small jolt of light after a long night of darkness. This is the quiet reality of life inside a car. Every parking choice is a calculation. Every location comes with hidden variables: heat, wind, visibility, security. It's not wandering. It's not randomness. It's strategy, played one cold night at a time. Part 9. The electrical ecosystem. For many people, electricity is something you plug into a wall. For those surviving in cars, electricity becomes a currency, a resource managed with the precision of an engineer, because warmth often depends on it. Some of the most experienced car sleepers have unintentionally become electrical engineers out of pure necessity. They've learned how different systems interact, how to ration power, how to keep devices alive without risking the most important component in the entire vehicle: the starter battery. The power tool hack. On job sites, Milwaukee and DeWalt batteries power drills and saws. In the world of car dwelling, those same batteries power heated jackets, heated vests, and small warming pads. Designed for construction workers, they've become part of a survival ecosystem. Portable power bricks that deliver hours of low-level heat without touching the car's ignition. Portable power stations. Then there are the modern power stations, brands like Jackery and similar devices. Small, self-contained units that can run heating elements for 2 or 3 nights straight. Not cheap, not glamorous, but far safer than draining the car battery and waking up to a vehicle that won't start in sub-zero temperatures. A dead engine isn't just an inconvenience. It's a hazard when the world outside is colder than your freezer at home. The library oasis. And that leads to the most ingenious part of the electrical ecosystem: recharging.
Where do people top off these batteries? Public libraries. Warmth, quiet, electricity, and a place to sit without being questioned. While batteries fill up under a desk, minds fill up too, with books, news, job searches, or just a moment of peace in a world that rarely offers it. It's a reminder that survival isn't only about heat, it's also about spaces that allow people to breathe, to think, to reset. And sometimes that space is a library, a calm harbor in the middle of a long winter. This is the electrical ecosystem of car living, resourceful, adaptive, and built from whatever a person can carry. Part 10. Humanity's True Warmth. The Buddy System. In a world obsessed with gadgets and gear, it's easy to forget one truth. Some of the most effective heat doesn't come from electricity, insulation, or physics. It comes from a heartbeat. Many people living in their cars rely on what they simply call the buddy system. 2 people, 1 vehicle, double the body heat, double the awareness, double the chance of seeing the morning. A medium-sized dog, for example, gives off roughly 50 watts of warmth. But ask anyone who's shared a freezing night with a dog and they'll tell you it's not just the heat. It's the presence, the steady breathing, the reminder that you're not doing this alone. Because in a metal box at 3 a.m., the worst danger isn't always hypothermia. Sometimes it's isolation. Over the years, car-dwelling communities have built something quietly powerful: phone trees and welfare checks. A simple system where volunteers send one message, "You okay?" to dozens of people scattered across parking lots and back streets. It sounds small. But when you live in a society that often walks past you without a glance, a single check-in can be the difference between disappearing into the night and being seen. A missed reply triggers concern. Concern triggers action. And action, in the middle of a freezing morning, can save a life. This is the warmth that doesn't show up on thermometers. A kind of psychological insulation. The comfort of knowing someone will notice if you stop responding. Because surviving winter in a car isn't only about managing heat. It's about managing hope. And sometimes, hope looks like a friend in the passenger seat, or a dog curled up at your side, or a glowing message on a cracked phone that simply asks, "You good?" Part 11. Conclusion. Lessons for the present. So, what do we actually learn from the reluctant engineers of the street? We learn that survival isn't a shopping list. It isn't gear. It isn't luck. It's a combination of ingenuity, physics, and resilience, stitched together night after night by people who refuse to give up. We learn that even when the world becomes harsh and unforgiving, humans carry internal resources, metabolic, mental, emotional, that most of us never use until we're forced to. The foam coffin and the metabolic furnace aren't just clever tricks. They're symbols of a deeper truth about the human spirit. When pushed into a corner, we adapt. We solve problems. We build systems out of scraps. We turn a cold metal box into a controlled environment through nothing but grit and creativity. These survivors aren't passive. They aren't merely getting by. They're solving complex engineering challenges under constant pressure, the kind most of us will never face. And maybe there's something in that for all of us. Because cold seasons don't only happen in winter. They happen in life, during financial struggles, moments of loss, periods where everything feels heavy. When those moments come, think of the car sleepers. Ask yourself, how can I insulate my heart? What internal furnace do I need to stoke to keep going? Because the lesson here isn't about cars. It's about human beings and the resilience we carry even when circumstances are brutal. Thank you for joining us at the Shelter Project. If you found these insights valuable, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, What's one lesson from these survival tactics that you can apply to your own life today? Stay warm, stay safe, and remember, we're all more resilient than we know.